Hello and welcome to A Cup of Conversation on BRT2 TV here in Lefkosia in North Cyprus. This week I'm very honoured to have three special guests. We just recently met and now we are together in the studio to talk about a very, very interesting project, a lifetime ambition for one American man here in the TRNC who is on a brief visit with a good friend of his and also with a publisher. We're talking about walking, we're talking about books. It's a very interesting out and about conversation today with Joel Stratte-McClure, Liz Chapman and Michael Knipe. First of all, guys, welcome to the programme.
Thanks, for having us. What a pleasure.
It's fantastic to see you once again, Joel and Liz, and it's a pleasure to meet you for the first time, Michael.
First time, yes. First time in Northern Cyprus.
First time in Northern Cyprus and first time on my television programme as well, yes. For all of you. Now, let's start with the man of the moment, and that's Joel. Joel, you are a great man, a fantastic speaker. I heard you on my colleague's radio programme, Denise Phillips, and I'm sure those of you who listen to Bike National Radio would have heard Joel's interview with Denise on the main event, and I was enthralled. I was outside listening to your interview, and you captivated all of us in the studio. For those who haven't heard about The Idiot, and I apologise for calling you The Idiot, but that is your nickname, we're walking around the Mediterranean, aren't we? Joel, tell us a bit about yourself, first of all.
First of all, I consider myself quite humble and soft-spoken, so I have to disagree with your characterization. My current activity, I was a journalist for 40 years. I covered the Woodstock Rock Festival, which you might remember in the late 60s, and wound up my career in Hollywood in 2009 writing about starlets and stars in Tinseltown. One of my great ambitions since I was a kid, at the age of 9, I began reading Greek and Roman myths, and I was always fascinated about the idea of the quest and the voyage and the journey on the Mediterranean to reach a goal, a treasure, accomplish something, usually with women and gods involved. I also have been an active hiker throughout my life. I've hiked in the Himalayas. In 1991, I hiked from the south of France to Paris. And I wanted something that would combine those two passions. At the age of 50 in 1998, I decided to walk around the Mediterranean Sea. That idea had been brewing for a couple decades. In 1984, I did a piece for Time magazine called Mediterranean Destinations, where I flew around the Mediterranean. And in that, my author's identity said, Joel Stratte-McClure plans to walk around the Mediterranean by the year 2000. In fact, I started this in 1998. I'm now in my 18th year of a 20-year project, which is the exact amount of time that it took Odysseus to go to the Trojan War and come back alive to the island of Ithaca. My steps are in the footsteps of my mentors and heroes. The first book and second book are largely influenced by Homer and the Iliad and the Odyssey. My title, of course, The Idiot and the Odyssey, Walking the Mediterranean, is a play on words of the Iliad and the Odyssey. So there's a lot of Homeric references. I wind up sleeping with a goddess, climbing the top of Mount Olympus to meet Zeus, going to Crete to find the birthplace of Zeus, swimming the Hellespont when I get to Gallipoli in Turkey to get down to Troy, where my second book ends. I'm now walking, researching, and will soon be writing my third book, which is in the footsteps of Alexander the Great, and will take me from Izmir in Turkey to Alexandria in Egypt. And that's what brought me to Cyprus. I had hiked down the coast of Turkey, a very long coast, the longest on the Mediterranean Sea, and got to the Syrian border, realized that even an idiot is not a lunatic, so I decided not to go into Syria. And instead came to walk around Cyprus, which I've accomplished during the past 6 weeks. And the reason for that, of course, is that Cyprus's navy was very important during the days of Alexander the Great, and after he died, one of his generals ruled the island. I've had a fantastic time here, different adventures with people and places every day, a marvelous journey, and when this is concluded, Alexander the Great just sent me, in fact, to meet Marco Polo, and Marco Polo told me where I should go next. That will be revealed later this year.
Fantastic, very interesting. I mean, as I said, I heard a preview of your work and what you've been doing and where you've been on Denise's interview. But this is like a child, it began in childhood, as you said, when you had an interest in mythology and, you know, as a youngster in America, you know, that sort of captivated your imagination. Although your career really, something completely different in, you know, in media and reporting. And then now to be reclusive, should I say, you know, being a loner, although you're not alone, because I know that you have now at the moment a great partner in Liz. A very different life. I mean, you know, there you are in the, you know, razzmatazz, you know, Woodstock and Hollywood, and then all of a sudden, you know, your real passion that's been with you since childhood is to be really traveling by yourself for most of the journey and following a dream. Although you are also a journalist, so you have that investigative approach to life as well. Do you combine everything in your life as you're walking around now? I mean, are you also investigating? Are you also enjoying meeting people? Are you also enjoying the fact that you can be by yourself? I know that you recently were in the Karpass Peninsula, a very, very isolated part of the island of Cyprus. Do you bring all these together as you are traveling?
Yeah, I think it's important that a midlife project about which one is passionate does combine the things that influenced you up to that stage of your life. So this involves exercise, it's a very spiritual, emotional, mental, and physical journey. And it involves obviously walking, it involves my investigative talents as a reporter and my love to do research. It takes me to new places. I lived outside the United States for 35 years and have been all over the world, but it enables me to go much slower than I used to go when I was jumping into a place to do a story. And that's one of the reasons that I chose to do it. I was tired of working quite successfully in different countries, doing stories for different people, but wanted to do something for myself that would combine my talents, and this worked very well. It may appear to be solitary and reclusive, but in fact, I do a lot of mental madness, mindful thinking when I'm walking. It's a very good way to meditate and empty your mind. And that's a very valuable aspect of the journey. At the same time, every day I'll see somebody interact with people, especially in Cyprus, where that whole idea of Turkish misafir and hospitality is so evident. I meet interesting people every day. I'm treated exceptionally well by everyone I meet. I've had absolutely no logistical or other problems here, though I've had many elsewhere. So it's a very peaceful, meditative, instructive project, and keeps me healthy, keeps me a little wiser, and doesn't make me too much wealthier.
How does this trek or this mission that you're on, how does it actually work? Because I know that you've been here on the island for a few weeks, although you went to Croatia and came back again recently. But how does it, I mean, how does one go about following in the footsteps of these mythological people? I know that, you know, you've also got Alexander the Great to follow in his footsteps, and, you know, Marco Polo was a great traveler, and, you know, the Odyssey and Odyssey. I mean, you know, how does one go about actually following in these footsteps? I mean, do you have the history in front of you and you follow the towns and cities? Do you walk? Do you have a destination that you want to get to by a certain date? How does it work, Joel?
Well, first of all, I went to Croatia to get this wonderful scarf with fish on it and walk with it around Cyprus, because I thought that it's so Cyprus.
Very Cyprus.
Yeah, very Cyprus. Basically, the joy of this is having the tutelage of Homer's Iliad and Odyssey and Alexander the Great's journey and Marco Polo's exploits and all the other people who have been involved in this type of travel during in history. Colin Thubron, who wrote a very good book about Cyprus also. So I really have my game plan made for me. I've got a sea that is 16,000 kilometers in perimeter, so I'm able to have a well-defined area to tackle. I've got books that have dealt with that sea in various aspects, so when there's something that is involved with one of Homer's books, I will make that my base camp for a week. For example, where the sirens were singing in Italy, or I go to some place like Crete or Sicily, where many of the scenes in his books take place, and we'll spend a couple months there. So and I also go counterclockwise or clockwise so that I know which way I'm going. I really am fairly flexible about where I get to on a particular day. because I go with the flow, if that expression still means anything, and it gives me an opportunity to be open to any sort of experience. At the same time, I often want to get from A to B, and I will walk as far as that necessitates. I don't carry a large pack, which I learned very early on would be a big mistake. Instead, I set up a base camp, and if I can set up a base camp in one of the mythological places from Homer's books, or in a place where Alexander the Great had a battle, and I stayed in Troy, and I was in Thessalonica, where at his birthplace, Alexander the Great's birthplace, then it's very easy. I stay there for a week, I walk 3 days to it, 3 days past it, hitchhike, use dolmushes, or otherwise get back and forth to where I start and end of the trek. So it's the logistics, after the first year of figuring out the best way to do it, are very simple. I don't have to concentrate on anything at all, and I'm very privileged and grateful that I'm able to do this. At the end of a hike, almost every day, I will see someone who's physically challenged or too old or otherwise unable to make this kind of simple walk, and just realize how wonderful it is. So it's a very simple project. The difficulty, of course, is sitting down for a year after I've accomplished what I want to accomplish and writing a book about it.
That's the hard part for you.
Well, I was a journalist for years, and I've done a lot of writing and written all sorts of things for all sorts of publications. But sitting down to write a book that combines so much information, because I collect masses of information, and the books, as you can see, are fairly long, but it's very difficult to go through, sift through that information and find out the things that interest me. I also publish these books not only on paper, but online. This gives you the map of my first book, which takes me from the Algerian border to Rome, and my second book, where I'm given 12 tasks to perform by the gods and goddesses, where I went for those tasks. Now, of course, I'm down in Cyprus and will be heading to Alexandria, because my third book deals with will end in Alexandria, Egypt. Right. So the logistics take care of themselves. Occasionally things will happen that interrupt the journey. I took a bad fall in Morocco. I was robbed by gypsies in south of Naples. My son and I lost our passports and money at one point. Those things kind of come with the territory. You can't expect to walk over 11,000 kilometers, which is where I am today, and not have something happen. But the positive well outdistances the few negative things that occur.
Fantastic to hear that it's all been mostly plain sailing for you. Now, beside you, we have a lovely lady. Her name is Liz, and I believe you met Liz in Kuşadası near Izmir.
Well, we actually met in 1997.
We
actually met in 1997 in Monte Carlo, which, as romantic as Ephesus and Kuşadası may appear, was much more romantic than meeting in Turkey.
Yeah.
But Liz is an ardent hiker, and she'll tell you how she got the various rips and stains on one of her med trekking shirts that she's even wearing inside out. No, that's the microphone.
Liz, welcome once again to the program.
Thank you, John. Wonderful to be here.
It's fantastic to see you again, and you're looking radiant and glowing. I think the Mediterranean sun has, done great for your
Can't help but
energy.
come out.
Helps it all come out. So tell us...
in this great company.
Great company as well. Tell us a bit about your background now with Joel. I mean, he says that you met in Monaco in '97.
Right. Well, I can start maybe when I left the U.S. for my own adventure,
Yes.
which was to go sailing, starting in the Caribbean, and then 2.5 years later on the North Sea. And soon after that, after I was on a boat that crashed in the Thames River, in the South Docks in the Thames River, and it was a 90-foot Swan that had just been rebuilt. And at that point, I thought it was a bit of a sign that maybe I could get off the sea for a while and try something, a land adventure.
Yeah.
So I went to visit friends in Geneva, Switzerland, and ended up staying there for 20 years, and got a job at the UN. And after a wonderful career at the World Health Organization, I had decided to return to the United States within a period of 2 years. I was going to stay in Europe for a while, and Joel and I got together. We were acquainted in the 90s, and then he got in touch, and I set up a book signing for him at Off the Shelf Bookshop in Geneva, Switzerland, an English-speaking bookstore, and had rave reviews. And then we just stayed in touch, and I was invited to participate in the first Med Trek, which I think was a bit of a test. Actually, Joel's test with me was I asked him to come hiking with me in the Jura, and it was raining. And he's an avid hiker, and we had a great time. And then 3 months later, 4 months later, I was in Bodrum, Turkey, on the first Med Trek, which was just to kind of zoom up a little bit. I've always been an avid walker and hiker, and I'm always seeking adventure within reason. And I've really found it's been amazing to witness Joel making his dream come true. And you can't really participate in somebody else's dream for too long as your own activity. So I've also found my own niche as his partner walking the Mediterranean. And every day is an adventure, oftentimes without much of a plan.
Yeah.
And some of the ordinary things at the moment, it seems like kind of an ordinary situation. When you write about it or think about it at night as we go over what happened during the day for each of us, extraordinary moments and extraordinary things, experiences with people, with the terrain, with testing our own endurance.
Yeah.
I think I've had to test mine a lot more than Joel. He's in a lot better shape than I am. But I keep up, and I keep smiling.
Well, I have to
this
say
is vintage Med Trek because it's torn, it's bleached, and I think it's totally appropriate for,
Well, I think it's more
and
of
it's
a trekker
pink, almost pink.
than Joel does today. I'm sorry, you're in your trainers, you're wearing the right gear. I mean, Mr. Cool here, he should be more, meditating and taking a yoga lesson at the moment than walking.
He does that as well.
He does that, I know. Because actually, I know that whilst here in Cyprus, in North Cyprus, you're with some friends, Michael Glanville and Viola Edward in Çatalköy. So there's also a link there as well for you, and they've helped you to have a base here in North Cyprus, and you've seen a lot of the islands. So for
Yes.
you, Liz, I mean, you're caught up with Joel's quest. As you say, you've got your own adventure going on as well now. But what's it like to live without really knowing where you might be or who you might meet or what you might be doing, in a week's time or in 2 weeks' time? Is it a really thrilling and exciting time for you?
It really brings home the be here now.
Yeah.
That I think that no matter where you are, I worked in an office 40 hours a week for 17 years. And, that's often a mantra that we hear just to keep the stress out of our lives and to stay focused and to be grateful. So I think no matter if I'm sitting at a desk or I have the privilege of walking the Mediterranean, I think that the be here now it really brings it home as you're walking along. I've found that you never know. You could be on a beautiful golden sand beach and turn the corner and there are cliffs that are unwalkable. And then finding ourselves in brambles where the forest is so thick that we're actually not, we have to look up or over to where the sea is to keep our bearings. And so I think it's, for me, this has turned into my own quest. It's not every day, it's not 365 days a year, it's 3 to 4 months a year. 2 months in the autumn and 2 months late spring, early summer. So I look forward to these times because so many of daily normal reality in life is more predictable just by responsibilities and commitments and building a life and maintaining a life. So to have this privilege of actually, the commitment is to stay open. The commitment is to get in shape and to stay in shape. And that, I start mornings with aspirin sometimes and, and an extra cup of coffee, but I don't have the option of saying no, or I'll sleep late, or I'll join you at lunch. This is an adventure, it's a journey, and there's a responsibility to greet the day and to make the best of it. And it's by walking, so.
Fantastic, very inspirational, and certainly a big change from your routine job at the UN and working 9 to 5 in the office certainly complete different change of lifestyle, but one that you're very happy with at the moment.
Yes, and the other thing is I've met as many noble people working along scientists and people very dedicated in the field of public health all over the world, as I do, for instance, in Turkey or Cyprus, strangers who offer water or a rest from the sun, or just strangers you might not know. We might not exchange names or be able to speak the same language, but that still noble sense of human kindness and warmth, and we've experienced that in Cyprus like really no other.
And finally, I would like to say hello to Michael. And Michael, we just met earlier on today, and you have literally joined the group here in North Cyprus. And it's a pleasure to have you here on the show. Thank you very much for joining us today on the program.
My pleasure.
And I know that you are an old friend of Joel's. You go back a few years, to put it politely. And you are also, let's say, is it a professional relationship as well as friendship? Because I know that you are
Yes.
publishing his books.
Yes, I'm editing his books.
Editing his books. So tell us a bit about your background with Joel as well, and
Well,
your own background.
I used to work for the Times as a foreign correspondent, and I worked in America, Africa, and the Middle East. When I was in Africa, I was based in Cape Town, and one day this fellow came in who was brought in by the Newsweek correspondent in the next office, and he said, "Look, this young fellow's come down walking through Africa, and he's still got the same T-shirt on and jeans, and he's a bit of a mess. Can you take him out? You dress smartly. Go and take him to your dress shop, your clothes shop." So I duly took this Joel Stratte-McClure across the road to my shop, and we kitted him out with some smart gear, you know. And then I started to get to know him, and he was the most charming and most fascinating guy, because he's very unusual. He's not like most people. And he got up to all sorts of tricks, and he was good fun to be with, always great fun. And we met up various parts of Africa. Then I moved off to the Middle East. Then I was back in London, and Joel would come over and see me. And it was always a great relationship. And at some point, he was writing these books, and he'd had a bit of a tough time in life, and various things had gone wrong. And, you know, when he got into the writing of the books was quite fascinating. But it wasn't until he asked me to edit the books that I realized that there was a background of Joel that I hadn't any knowledge of at all, which was that he was a classicist, and he knew his Greek and Roman history to a remarkable degree. And what he's done with these books, these are travel books. He's walking around the Mediterranean, he's doing something very practical, and he's meeting all sorts of people, and he writes about what he's doing and where he's going and the places, and there's always adventures taking place, but then he's musing and he's thinking, and his mind is going off into a fantasy world, to the myths of history, and he blends these things together beautifully. And I've learned so much about Greek history and Greek myths that I didn't know before, and this is a book that takes you to an area that you wouldn't normally get to. So that's one of the most fascinating things about it.
So, and that's, maybe captivated you is to keep editing his books. And will you be editing the third one as well?
I hope I will be.
Fingers
And of course,
crossed.
the one thing I hadn't done, I like walking as well, but I had never done anything like this. And so he said, "Why don't you join me?" And I'm delighted to do so. And it's great fun.
So you are now actually joining him on this part of the walk.
I've been training in London and working, from one end of London to the other to make certain I can keep up with him.
And what happens now then? Will you continue to follow? How long will you be following Joel and Liz?
At the moment, it's going to be the next 4 or 5 days here, and then we're going to be meeting up in Israel to walk there, and maybe in Lebanon. Hopefully, we'll be doing that. But the books have taken him from France, Spain, Morocco, and then the second book, which was to Italy, Turkey, and Greece, of course. And it's a most amazing project.
So would you class these books? I mean, forget what Joel thinks about his books and what he's thinking about, but would you class these books then as maybe geography, history, travel books all coming together as one.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's exactly what he can do, and he does, and it's a fascinating read.
In a very entertaining way.
In a very entertaining way, indeed.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Joel, so here you are in Cyprus now. So what does Cyprus mean for you? I know that, you were talking about the Turkish hospitality that you've enjoyed in Turkey and now here in the TRNC. But what does Cyprus mean for you? Will it be part of your third book? How does it fit in with what you're writing about? I mean, would you have normally come to Cyprus had you not known Michael de Glanville and Viola Edward?
I certainly may not have come to Cyprus if there hadn't been the problems that there are in Syria.
Can I just butt in? I should make this point. Even when he was walking around Greece and the other part of the book, he's been around a lot of Greek islands.
Yes.
And Turkish places. So when he gets here, he's found it the most fascinating island of the lot, and I think that's very interesting.
Right.
I've been to Cyprus before many times, and as a journalist I've been covering the story. He's come in with a very fresh, open mind to it, and he's been fascinated by the mix of people and the situation here, which is quite fascinating.
As you were saying, Joel, yes, about
Sorry to interrupt.
the situation in Syria. Had the situation not been there, you might have gone to Syria next.
I would have gone to Syria next. I might have come here later. What I've learned, though, is obviously there's an Alexander the Great connection, as I said earlier, due to the importance of the Cypriot Navy back in the day. And one of his generals took over the island after he died. What I've found, however, is what I think is the most interesting island in the Mediterranean, largely due to its current history since 1960 with independence. There are so many surreal, Kafkaesque, Orwellian aspects of life here that most of you, because you live it on a daily basis, no longer are intrigued by or shocked by or perhaps even interested in, that to a newcomer, especially a walker who goes very slowly and meets so many diverse people, that you don't find anywhere else on the Mediterranean. Not just the divided country, but the cultures, the history, the mix of cultures, the political aspects are very, very intriguing. And they've impacted everyone on this island in one way or another. And people are still very passionate about what has happened to them. You just don't find that on other islands. So I find it extremely interesting, occasionally discussing what might happen in the future, but more interestingly, determining what has happened in the past. That's why it was very interesting for me to know Michael de Glanville. We both lived in the south of France at the same time during the 80s and 90s, and he's Cypriot born, and is able to give me a perspective that he's been walking with me for about 10 days. And Michael has been able to give me a perspective that I otherwise wouldn't have gotten if I were by myself. So that was a key element to my evolution, the evolution of my understanding. It would be vainglorious of me to try to project what might happen here, but it has given me a great understanding of how we got to where we are. I find it very similar. I've really enjoyed going to countries that are on the cusp of change. I was in Burma and Cuba just before they turned. I've been in Tibet, which I think is also a very interesting place. But Cyprus is right up there with these countries. You can feel some sort of transition happening. Whether it takes a week or another generation, I don't know. Or whether the status quo is maintained, also a possibility. But you do feel a vibrancy in the air here, a positive vibrancy. That you don't get anywhere else. And I think the mix of languages, cultures, people is just fascinating. And I do bring a new perspective to it and a humility, because it's very difficult for an outsider to understand how a situation like this can perpetuate itself, why there can't be an easy resolution. And when I go to a town like Dipkarpaz, and there are still United Nations troops bringing supplies in every Wednesday in UN trucks to a population that is, I think, perhaps the most mixed on the island, with Greek Cypriot, Turkish Cypriot, Kurdish, and Turkish population. It just fascinates me. And of course, as an outsider, it's easy for me to interact with all these populations all these people on a personal level without being involved in the overall macro picture. So it's been very, very educational. I think you should be very happy to be in a place which may have its frustrations due to a situation that's been the way it's been for 4 decades, but to be part of this must be fascinating.
Well, hearing from you now, it makes me think more about it, and it is a fascinating time in history for us as well. At the moment, things are developing slowly but surely, and you can see that as an outsider as well. With technology, thank God to modern technology, you're actually quite up to date with what's going on around the world as well, even though you are traveling by yourself. And people actually follow you, can't they? Because you have your own blog now.
I do have a blog and a website, Twitter account, Facebook, you name it, I'm there. The easiest way to get in touch with me is go to www.followtheidiot.com, and there you'll get an appreciation of what I do on a daily basis, and once a week a column called Follow the Idiot, where I take you to where I've been recently. There have been, I think, 4 stories about Cyprus and my walk here, lots of photographs. I'll do one more when I complete the journey in a couple days. And then even when I'm away from the med trek, which is what I call my walk because it's meditative, medicinal, and Mediterranean, even when I'm away from that, I put up items on a daily basis. I love people who follow me and get interested, especially when they are in the country I'm in, who make comments. So I'm a very easy person to find and follow.
It is also so that you can keep a track of what you've done, where you've been, because later on when you do write the book, obviously you've been to so many places, experienced so many things, met so many people. It is also a way to keep a record of what you've done.
Well, every day before I do anything after my daily journey, except perhaps take a shower, I write notes. And I also have the daily blog and the weekly blog and hundreds of photographs that go up on the web. And all that will ultimately be part of the fodder that I've got to distill for the next book, which is a challenge because there's a lot of it, as I indicated. But I think, let me just go and get my thoughts for a second.
Well, I'll say that these help you to actually collect all your thoughts together. So later on, when you do write your third and your next book, you'll be able to refer back to where you were at a certain time, who you met, what you did, and your experiences in all these different countries. I'd like to ask you, Joel. I know this is a very unfair question because it's like saying choose your favourite child if you had 3 or 4 children. But do you have a special country or a special moment where let's say you went to Troy and you saw the Trojan horse, which refers back to your mythology. Is there any special moment in this trek that you're doing now that really stands out for you and you think wow, amazing?
Well, every day, of course, is a special moment when I'm traveling with my beautiful partner. And every day something happens that is completely unforeseen and unique and wonderful. And I think that one of the aspects of walking around the Mediterranean is that it's a type of yin-yang thing. There are occasional moments of ugliness, extreme ugliness, that contradict, that create the beauty at the other extreme, and balance out into a very nice appreciation of a wonderful part of the world. So beautiful moments every day, wonderful memories, and that's what I really want to do. I want to take light footsteps and leave with only my memories.
Beautiful put there, beautifully put, and it's amazing that people, as yourselves, are so inspirational to others because we all sit in our daily jobs. I mean, for me, this is my daily job. And, you don't appreciate all the time what's going on outside in the outside world, even though I do meet lovely people like you on a weekly basis. But, it certainly puts things into perspective and that, you're doing this now, you're following your dream, you're also keeping fit, you're enjoying life, and every day is a discovery, is a journey. And that must be an exhilarating, amazing thing to wake up and to think, wow, here I am in such a wonderful place, and where will I be tomorrow, and who will I meet, what will happen? I think you are very inspirational to all of us, Joel. Thank you very much for sharing that as well online with us and with your books. Fantastic, inspirational guy. I know that Liz has kept you company and has been inspirational to you as well. It's nice to have somebody to share your, being lonely, okay, you can be free, but also to share your experiences with somebody makes it even better, doesn't it? You share your joy.
Well, her presence will obviously be a key factor in the next book, and there are many amusing anecdotes which I'm sure she'll be thrilled to read. I have trouble convincing, you may find this difficult to believe, I have trouble convincing people that this actually is my job, that I've abandoned all other forms of journalism and writing for the moment to concentrate on this, whether it's the blog or Facebook or Twitter or my daily notes or writing the books themselves. It's very pleasant work, but it's still work, and I think that's important for somebody at my age. I'm 66, to put things in perspective and realize that you can continue using the skills that you obtained when you were an actual working person.
But he doesn't take himself too seriously, and the whole project is this crazy idea, and it works out. And so there's a lot of humor in the books, and a lot of,
Only dignified English journalists find it a crazy idea. Most people would love to be doing it, wouldn't they?
And Michael, as a journalist yourself, I'm sure you can relate to the things that Joel is talking about, and you both have a journalistic background. And as a foreign correspondent, you've also seen many different countries and been around. But this is very unique. I have to say, don't tell me that Joel is one of many people who are doing this. Obviously there are people who go and travelling, backpacks. Youngsters around the world, travel, take a gap year off before university, for instance, and go around the world. But this is a very unique, I think,
absolutely.
Person here, a unique couple. Surely very, very interesting for you as a journalist.
Absolutely.
To join them.
This is it. The very fact that it's a long developing process that's going on for not 10 years, 15 years, 18 years. And I'm interested by the fact that Liz's involvement, because she's got her own little tack, and it's the animals she meets on the way. And she's paying so much attention to the animals. She never stops without there being a dog or a cat or a cow or a pony that crops up in this. So she's got her own field to follow, you see.
Fantastic. So Liz, expand on that for us, please. Then, you were in the Carpathos recently, and that's where we have our donkey sanctuary. Yes. You see the donkeys there?
Yes, beautiful. The wild donkeys with the white spotted on their nose. And they're easy to spot by their white noses. And
we have lots of cats and dogs around.
Yes.
And so, as an animal lover, are you always stopping to feed and to look after? There are so many animals out there, especially in nature. Obviously you have to be a nature lover to enjoy the treks as well, because it's nice to walk and keep fit, but you're out there, in nature, and obviously to see, the flora and fauna is also beautiful as well. Each country with its different, endemic species. Well, how have you found North Cyprus in that respect? Are you enjoying the beauty of the island as well?
Oh, yes. No, it's exquisite here. It really is. And it's really, I think, the prettiest place in terms of one concentrated area.
Yeah.
That we've seen so many different kinds of terrains, beautiful, exquisite places in Cyprus, and compared to other places that we've been. Each place has its beauty, I have to say. So it's hard to say a favorite, but I can say, first of all, as far as the animals, I'd like to back up a little bit, because that is a passion of mine. It's always been a passion of mine. When my four-legged soulmate, black pug Fritz, died 2 years ago, instead of rushing out to get another dog, I really thought, in honor of the joy and the love he gave me for 10 years, that I would just do what I could if any animals cross my path in any way, in a rescue type situation. Since I don't have a property for a sanctuary at the moment, it's really whatever animal crosses my path. And that's really sort of how, I would love to go out and start my own NGO to rescue and educate about strays, but I really think it's part of wherever I am to respect the way things work in different ways. It's very different where I live in the US, for instance. It's different in Europe as well from the US. You're allowed to bring dogs to restaurants. That would be unheard of in the States. And in Turkey and other places, and in Cyprus, there are strays everywhere. And I see them emaciated, tick-infested, dogs and cats suffering. So when I see animals suffering, I have to stop. And it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that the MedTrek stops. I have to find a way to incorporate this as part of the quest and stay on the path. Because I could be taken off the path very easily to try and help and rescue different situations. Now, we did spend one day at the vet to have two stray dogs that I feel we had the privilege of taking them to a vet and having them looked at and cared for. I would love to be able to follow up and to know that they're eating well and they're better. I don't know, but I know that we at least offered for the moment something. And I carry dog food and cat food. Now, one of the things I've noticed is that the animals, for instance, the wild donkeys, the birds, some of the feral cats that live in the wild as well, they all look healthy. They're not coming towards us waiting for a handout or looking to crossing our paths. When oftentimes strays will come, stray dogs will come to us, and if I start feeding them, they'll follow us on the path. And then it becomes a point of concern that they'll lose their way, and oftentimes we have to hike on the road for a while, and we don't want the dogs following us on the roads because it's dangerous for them. So these types of situations, we have to kind of, drop them off or find a way.
The MedTrek around Cyprus would have been a week shorter had we not had this fascination.
But he stops for other things. I mean, he stopped to swim the Bosphorus, didn't you?
He swam the Hellespont.
Yeah.
No, you have to be prepared to be diverted and enjoy the diversions.
But that's probably the whole, one of the attractions maybe of doing this MedTrek, because you don't have to be at a certain place at a certain time. You can maybe take a break and be on a TV or radio show every now and then as well, or to look after the animals that you see. And I think it's just liberating. I feel that it probably, you give me that sort of vibe that it must be a very liberating experience to be able to be so free, and then just say, well, today I want to do this and I'm going to go there, and who knows. The uncertainty is probably the attraction, I think.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned my clothing earlier.
Yeah.
And I want you to know this is the first time in the month I've been here that I've been able to wear this particular outfit. So thank you very much for having us on, because without that, these clothes would not have been taken out of the bag. And I think I'll keep it on for a couple hours, but people will give me odd looks, and I'll probably change back into shorts and hiking shoes.
You look fantastic, though. You look very, very, cool, relaxed, and happy and contented. And I think that's what life is all about. In the short time that we are on Earth, I think that if you can follow your dream that you have, that you guys are doing, I think, you're blessed, really, in a way, because you can do it. And I think we're all very jealous out there, aren't we? That, Joel and Liz and even Michael for a while can join you on your quest. Now, we need to wrap up and everything. I want to promote again the fact that you are going to be writing your third book soon when this finishes. But when I say soon, you actually have maybe a year or two still left of the trip, yes, of the MedTrek.
I've got about 2 more years of walking and researching to do before I begin the writing process, which will usually take a year, a little more. And that's part of this whole continuum. I look forward to that too. But it's a day at a time, and it's the goal is the path is the goal type of project. So as Liz mentioned, it's very good to remember that to stay in the now, to stay in the day, to be focused on what we're doing today and not to project too much. So I do want to get to Alexandria, Egypt, as sort of a present to Alexander the Great. I'm not going to go to Persia, but it's such a joy to be able to do this and to take time off to come and see you, or to help the 2 dogs we took to the vet near Girne. And these social encounters are so much a part of what we do that this is work.
What fun work you're having. What a great work that you're
Absolutely.
doing. And I think, again, like I always say, I think you are an inspiration to everyone out there, Joel. You know, you've had a very, very interesting life, and now you're enjoying, you know, your time on this earth, following your dreams, following what inspired you when you were 8 or 9 back in America, and here you are in the middle of the Mediterranean, on the crossroads, as they say in Cyprus, a country where many, many civilizations came and conquered and ruled, and you know, you're right in the middle of it all now. I wish you all the best for the rest of the Medtrek, and for anyone who wants to find out more, they can still follow you now, and it's the blog once again is Follow the Idiot.
Follow the Idiot, www.followtheidiot.com.
Right.
And you will learn more than you ever thought you could or should.
And you can see wonderful photographs of the countries, the places he's been to, and very interesting write-ups about, you know, his experiences. And hopefully the third book will be out, well, you know, maybe in 2018, 2019.
I'd say 2020 would be a safe date.
Is that a safe date? All right then.
I'm playing around with it in my mind. I'm beginning to play around with it. And as I said, my first book had lots of personal ruminations about things that have affected me, divorces, relationships, abuses, alcohol abuses, that type of thing. So there were a lot of personal reminiscences. The second book had these 12 tasks that the gods gave me to perform, all of them very interesting. And the third book, In the Footsteps of Alexander the Great, will include other personages like Marco Polo who will step in. I see Alexander the Great and Zeus and other personalities of the goddess Athena from time to time. I had a great session with Alexander in the museum in Antalya in Turkey, who gave me the direction to go. His favorite expression every time I'm bemoaning something is, get a chariot, but I haven't yet. I continue to walk. Then he sent me to see Marco Polo in Croatia. So I get advice from all these people, and I think I'll find an interesting way to weave various historical personalities into the book, not just giving me advice, but tell anecdotes about them that I think will add a little richness to my own travel narrative.
And don't forget also the birthplace of love, Aphrodite. You should go to Aphrodite's birth. She came from the foams of the coast of, you know, south of the island. So you must go and pay a visit to
I've been to Aphrodite's rocks. I've been to Aphrodite's baths. I went to the Aphrodite Beachfront Hotel. I know more about Aphrodite and Adonis, the private and intimate details of that relationship, which is one of Cyprus's many myths, than most people do. So yeah, I'm pretty well versed in Aphrodite, and I've had wonderful times going everywhere here, and that will certainly be a part, or at least a chapter of the next book when I figure it out. And there are many ways that I will weave things in. As I mentioned, Michael de Glanville has been extremely helpful, and we've just had some rich social experiences that complemented by Liz's affection for dogs and a very nice visit to a very nice vet will be part of the book.
Fantastic. Well, guys, unfortunately, we could go on forever and ever chatting, but we've run out of time for our interview. But this has given a taster to our viewers, anyone watching out there, of what you're all about, what Joel is all about. And I want to say thank you very much for sharing your experiences with us. Good luck with, as I said before, the rest of the Medtrek and with writing the book. And good luck with editing the third book in the series. And who knows where this will lead to in the future, what other treks there will be. But thank you for including Cyprus in your travels.
Well, thank you very much for having us here. The coffee was great, the water was pure, and it's always a delight to see you.
The company was excellent as usual with you guys.
Great.
Thank you very much. Liz, good luck with your travels with Joel as well, and look after as many animals as you can. But good luck with your own quest as well. I'm sure that you're having a good time as well, travelling the Mediterranean with Joel. And thank you, Michael, for joining us in the studio today. And I hope that you have a good time catching up with these guys, keeping up with these guys as well.
That's right. I'm hoping so.
And please let us know how you get on as well. Maybe you'll be writing a few things
Right.
for everyone else to read. But do you have a site that anyone could read your work? Are you still...
I don't actually, but I must get round to that. I'm of the typewriter generation, and
Right.
getting into blogs and things.
Well,
hasn't quite,
maybe Joel can teach you how to blog while you're with him on
Maybe,
this journey. But Michael, thank you very much for coming to BRT today as well.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, guys, and good luck.
Thanks.
Thank
Thanks a
you.
lot.
Thank you.
And with that, we have come to the end of a very interesting couple conversation. And until we meet again next week, go well, take care. Bye-bye.